So before I get into OKRs, before we get into sort of the interactive side of this, I want to take it back a level. I want to talk about the philosophy and the ideology behind this. And what I'm really talking about here is the outcome mindset. I'm just going to ask the question, and feel free to come off mute and just shout out anything or pop in the chat. When you hear the word outcome, what do you think? What do you think an outcome is, or what do you think the outcome mindset is? Feel free to pop in the chat, or if anybody wants to come off mute, feel free. A result, great. A result, definitely. Results, all about results. Anyone else want to shout out? What do you think of an outcome? What's the outcome to you? Agreement?
Determining the success of your plan based on the outcome.
Yeah. So coming up with the success of your plan based on the outcome. I see solution. I see focus on results. Agreement. Yeah, these are really good words. I love it. Successful conclusion, hopefully. Yep. Agree, Robert. Awesome. Some really good thoughts there. Okay. When I think about an outcome mindset, I actually borrow a definition that was written by a lady called Deirdre Packnad. And Deirdre Packnad is the CEO of a company called Workboard, who are a software company. And she writes about the outcome mindset, meaning operating with true clarity on our intent and impact. And there are 3 words I just love there. Well, actually 4 words, operating, because this isn't not a tool or a technology, it's actually a mode of operation. The 3 words I really love are clarity, intent, and impact. Clarity, it means it's just really clear what success looks like for us all. There's no ambiguity. It's just really clear where we're going and what we're trying to achieve and what great results look like. Also focus on intent. So it's not a command and control. It's not a delegation. It's not a management tool. It's about communicating the intent and communicating the vision. It's communicating the why, so that everybody's bought in and can connect to it, and we can then empower those teams then to work towards that intent. And then the 3rd word I love there is impact, because really good OKRs are connected to impact. And it means it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It's a reason to go to work. It's a reason for your team members to feel really passionate and motivated by what they're doing, because they have got clarity on the impact that their work is achieving, because they can see how their delivery is connected to the strategic outcome that the organization is working towards. So I love those words that Deirdre Packnad came up with. There's a few quotes that I just love to start this presentation with. The first one is from the Book of the Little Prince, and I think this sort of sets the scene really well. So Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said, "If you want to build a ship, you don't drum up the men to gather wood and divide the work and give orders. Instead, you teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea." Right? And that's a bit of the outcome mindset. It's not you do this, you do that, divide what you command and control. It's here's the vast and endless sea, yearn for it. Okay, and I think that's a beautiful sort of setting the scene for outcome mindset. Then there's Yogi Berra in the world of baseball, and I love this quote: "If you don't know where you're going, you might not get there." And how true is that? Like, if you think about all of the people that you work with, all the work you've ever done, if you actually don't know where you're going, how are you going to know if you ever get there? So it's a really good quote there. And then the gentleman who's sort of cited as being the godfather of modern management, a guy called Peter Drucker. I'm not sure if he is actually the one that quoted this, but I love it. "You cannot improve what you do not measure." You cannot improve what you do not measure. And I think it's a really important point. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is not just outcomes, but measurable outcomes, because you cannot improve what you do not measure. So when we think about outcome-centric organizations, and I'd encourage you to think about your clients and think about your own organization here, these are the characteristics that we see. They are underpinned by an inspiring purpose, in that people feel there is a purpose behind what we're doing here, and the help and the support and the guidance we are providing. There is absolute universal clarity on where we are going and what we are trying to achieve. And because we have that purpose and clarity, we're able to confidently give empowerment to the teams. We're not dividing up the wood. We're not command and controlling. We are saying, look, you've got clarity. You know where we're trying to get to. You're empowered now to find new ways to get there. And the framework we're going to introduce is what puts the guardrails to keep you focused and connected through to that purpose. So empowerment and focus are really strong characteristics of outcome-centric organizations. And when we have great empowerment and focus, we start to create alignment. So an individual in a team can be aligned with how what they're doing is helping move the needle and achieve an outcome of another team. So if you've got a delivery team connected to a business line team connected to a strategic team, we start to join those lines. And I'm going to talk a lot about the tooling that we can help you to do that. And then most importantly, it's impact driven. So the purpose has got an impact, and you can see the impact that your work is having on your stakeholders, on your customers, on your users, on their behaviors. And the outcome mindset really kind of brings that to life. So that was just a very brief intro to the outcome mindset. What we're going to dive into now is OKRs, objectives and key results. And I like to, if you think of the outcome mindset being a philosophy or an ideology, OKRs are a way of actually instantiating that, making it real. So OKRs are really a tool that help provide the bridge from strategy to execution, and then helping every single person in your organization understand what that big plan is, what that big vision is, what that North Star is, and how they connect into it and what their role is. So most organizations, if not all organizations, have got a big mission, a big vision that's been set, by the strategic owners, the leadership, the C-suite, the investors, the owners, etc. And that really outlines why we exist and what the value that we provide as an organization is. Then we have a strategy, which is the thinking behind how we are going to navigate and achieve this big vision, this big North Star. And at the other end of the spectrum, at the top, we've got execution. We've got all these people working in teams, working in departments, working in domains, working on projects, completing tasks, producing deliverables, producing outputs, writing code, generating marketing assets, whatever your business does or whatever your customer's business do, you have got a huge execution arm. The gap between those things is quite big. And this is what OKRs are there to solve, because they create the alignment and the bridge between strategy, mission, and vision and execution. It's actually a really simple framework. There's really just two parts to it. It's a goal-setting framework that helps teams and individuals and organizations set ambitious goals with measurable results. So there's two parts. There's the objective, or the O, which is the definition of the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And then you've got the key results, or the KRs. And this is the success criteria used to measure progress towards the outcome, measure progress towards the outcome. It's not a list of tick boxes. It's not a project plan. It is little indicators, little needles that you're going to see move. And when they move, it is telling us that we are making progress towards our outcome. Lots more to come on that. That's what OKRs are. It's useful to explain the anatomy. So an objective is typically written at quarterly level. We'll talk a bit about cadence later on. You may have strategic OKRs set at sort of C-suite level, which are maybe less regular and maybe annual OKRs. Some teams I'm seeing do monthly OKRs, but quarterly is probably the sweet spot for many teams. And it is setting the outcome that we want to achieve. Then we've got a collection of key results, usually 3-ish, maybe a few, maybe 1 or 2 more, maybe 1 or 2 less. We'll talk about that shortly, which is how we're going to measure progress. These are different to initiatives and tasks. Initiatives and tasks are outputs, whereas key results and objectives are focused on outcomes. So the initiatives might be a project that you're going to run, or a big event that you're going to run. You're going to produce some output that's impactful. We want to see whether that output is going to move the needle on 1 or more of those key results, because that tells us if we're going to reach our objective and achieve the outcome. Similarly, tasks are usually a breakdown of initiatives. So important differentiation between outcomes and outputs, and OKRs and initiatives/tasks. OKRs were actually born in the 1970s. Intel, the company Intel, were the first organization to try using OKRs, but they became really famous in the 1990s when a gentleman called John Doerr wrote a book called Measure What Matters. John Doerr is probably the godfather of OKRs. I will share a link to his book later on. He invested heavily in Google in its early stages, and Larry Page, one of the co-founders, cites OKRs as being one of the things that has helped them grow 10x many times over. As I mentioned in my intro, my co-founder came from Google, so I've learned a lot of the behaviors of how Google use OKRs really well. We've codified a lot of those behaviors into our platform and our operating system. Now, John Doerr, in his book Measure What Matters, called out 4 superpowers of OKRs, and they really create focus. They start to get everybody focused on the 2, 3, 4 objectives or outcomes that really matter in that time period. They help create focus on measuring what really matters. That's the name of his book. It creates alignment. And we'll talk about how we connect and align and nest OKRs together between teams, and some of the tooling we've done there. So we start to see how one group of people's measures help another group of people's move their measures towards outcomes. It is a tracking tool, so it allows us to track progress on a week-by-week basis. It allows us to assess if we are heading in the right direction or not, and have feedback loops and course correction built into the system of work. And then one of the things I love, it creates an environment to be stretching so that people working on OKRs feel comfortably uncomfortable or uncomfortably comfortable. It's like it's really stretching what we're aiming for in this next quarter, but it's achievable. And I'll get into much more detail about this as well, but there's a lot of psychology behind OKRs that really triggers high-performing teams. And Bella, my co-founder, and I, when we wrote this material, we actually thought there's a 5th superpower, and we didn't want it to leave it unnoticed, and that's purpose, because it really connects the work that we do to purpose. And we find when people work in purpose organizations and people feel connected to the purpose, they are naturally higher performing, they're naturally more motivated, they naturally work on the right things that move the needles towards the right outcomes, and it's less waste. So the purpose is such an important superpower. Love that you're all interested in OKRs. I'm sure some of you have tried using OKRs. Lots of the big modern companies are now using OKRs as a part of their goal setting framework and their communications tools. You can see a few of them then. Right, we're going to talk about writing OKRs and how to write really good OKRs. And I'm going to introduce a few little tools that you've got access to for free that will hopefully help you write some really good OKRs. So first of all, let's dive into what is an objective. Well, a really good objective should be designed to get people jumping out of bed in the morning with excitement.
right? And it's like, why are we here? What are we aiming to achieve, right? What's our reason for doing what we do? And it should, those objective statements are really our reason for doing what we do. So there's a few criteria. There's a crib sheet in the Stellify platform that you've got access to, where you can print this out as a PDF and have it to your side, so you don't need to make notes of this. I guess the top characteristics of an objective, it's outcome focused. So it's all about the destination. It's not a task list. It's not a predetermined solution. It's about, you know, where are we trying to get to in 3 months' time or a year's time. It should be really inspiring. It should be an important, a worthwhile goal. People should feel they really want to get behind it. Okay, if it's a well-written objective. It should be ambitious, but achievable. This is the stretching characteristic. It should feel, ooh, that's punchy. That's going to be tricky. That's not going to be a walkover. But we can do this if we focus. We can do this in the next quarter. It should be qualitative. So that means it describes the goal or the problem we're trying to solve. We don't need to worry about numbers. They come later when we introduce key results. So we'll come back to the numbers a little bit later. They should be time bound. It should be really clear. This is an objective for Q2. You know, we're in Q2 in Stellify at the minute, and we're in the last 3 weeks. We just had our OKR check-in today. So it's absolutely clear what we're trying to achieve by the end of June. It should be clear and memorable. I like short objectives. I love to put a big keyword in caps at the front. You know, if we think back to the objective for this session, it's all about equip. And if I want people to remember one word, what is that word? But also remove acronyms and things that people might not understand. Just make it really clear and memorable. So the acid test for me is if I go to any of your team and I ask them, hey, what's your objectives for this quarter? They should be able to recite them, because this is what's front of mind. We need to limit to 5, and this is a really important one because it's all about creating focus. We shouldn't be working towards more than 5 objectives at any one time, and if we can do less than 5, we should do. Yeah, it's if you suddenly think you needed 10 objectives and this team need to focus on these 10 things, we need to think about prioritization, because we're going to have too much context switching, too many balls in the air, not enough focus, and not enough stuff getting done. They should be owned by the team who are doing the execution. So this is not management by objective. This is about people defining their objectives, writing them at the beginning of the time box, and then if they write them, they're motivated and they take accountability to execute them. And then most importantly, they should support the company mission. We should see how it's connected, how we're joining the dots up to the company mission. And I'll show you some of the techniques for that a little bit later. So key results then. Key results are about taking all of that wonderful inspirational language and quantifying it. And the question we ask here is, how are we going to collectively know if we've met our objective? How will we know? Because a lot of these objectives are quite, I don't want to say woolly, but they're quite, ambitious and visionary. And there could be all sorts of ambiguity as to, well, have we met it or haven't we? How are we going to know? And this is where key results come in. So these are quantitative measurements of value. They measure the outcomes, they measure the impact. They're not measuring the individual task, counting up the tasks, but we will talk about the input-output outcome, which I'll talk to in the next slide. But really, the first measure is, how will your stakeholders, how will your customers, how will your users measure success? Because that's your outcome. They should be necessary and sufficient. So if I look at, say, 5 key results for an objective, it should be really clear, oh yeah, if that needle moves and that needle moves and that one and that one and that one, yes, that means we have reached our outcome. And there's no argument about that. There's no ambiguity. It's really clear, yeah, I've got to do all of those in order for us to say we have achieved the objective and we've reached the outcome. we love to have a blend of leading and lagging indicators. One of the challenges I see a lot of teams do, they're either all lagging and you don't know until the end whether you've actually made the progress or not, or they're all leading and it's like, oh, well, we can just do all of these things, but we're not measuring the outcome. So we love to have a blend of leading and lagging indicators, and I'll talk about that more on the next slide. Each key result should be a challenge, right? It should feel stretching. It should feel comfortably uncomfortable. It shouldn't be so difficult or impossible that people think that's never going to happen. The rule of thumb is that over time, your key results should get a score of 50 to 70%. So that means we're leaving room for experimentation, room for learning, room for failing, room for improvement, and not hitting 100% all of the time. This is one of the things I learned from Googlers a lot, and I'll talk more scoring later on because there's some psychological safety aspects of this about how this sets up a much more stretching and high performing environment. They should be very specific and measurable. There shouldn't be any room for debate as to how we score it or where we get the data from. And in fact, in our platform, as you'll see, we actually prompt you to say, if you're setting up this key result, how are you going to measure it? And that should provide further clarity and help iron out any kind of assumptions or misalignments. Again, we want to limit to 5. Less if we can, because we shouldn't have dozens and dozens and dozens of key results. I will talk about KPIs later on, which you can have dozens of, but I'll come back to that. Again, there should be ownership and accountability from the team, the people who are on point to execute against this, and they should be easily understandable. So again, removing the jargon, removing the acronyms. What we're trying to get to with OKRs is people not thinking about what's on my to-do list today, but they're thinking about what needle am I trying to move today? What is the measure I'm trying to move for our team today? And that is a really good sign that the key results are well understood and well bought into. Now, in the example key OKR that I used for this workshop, I talked about 3 types, and I love to try and get a blend of these. The first is an input key result. This is effort-based. So this is how you measure what you're doing, the effort you're putting in to achieve this goal. It's probably the easiest one for you to move the needle because you've just got to put the effort in. And it basically measures what are we doing to make progress. So an example would be, we are going to publish 15 thought leadership articles by the end of the quarter. Okay, that is an input effort-based key result. All we've got to do is write those 15 thought leadership articles and hit the publish button. That's in our gift, that's in our control. Okay. And it means, are we taking the steps that we think is going to generate the outcome? It doesn't guarantee it, but it's our guess, it's our bet, really. We think that if we publish 15 thought leadership articles by the end of the quarter, good things are going to happen, including this output key result. So this is the deliverable. This is the output we expect to get. We don't know, but we hypothesize that if we do that input, we are going to get this output, and it measures what gets produced as a result of the effort. So we might think our output is, well, we're going to get 5 media mentions in tier 1 industry publications. I can't guarantee that, but my bet is if we put 15 thought leadership and we put that effort in, this is the output that we're going to achieve. And we are going to learn very fast if we've got that hypothesis right by setting up the system. But what we really want is an outcome key result. And this is the business impact or the behavioral change that's resulting from that effort and is resulting from the outputs that the effort's generated. So it's the second level of hypothesis and really measures the value that has been created either for your organization or for your customers. So for example, an outcome key result might be improve unaided brand awareness in the target market from 25% to 40%. That is, again, a hypothesis. 15 articles is going to generate 5 media mentions. It's going to improve the unaided brand awareness. This is a little thread, a little system that we've identified and a set of hypotheses that through the OKR cycle, we are going to learn if we are achieving that outcome or not. And if we're not, we will do something differently. So they work really well together because one feeds the other. And I've got another example here. If I were to hold 12 weekly retrospectives, that's something we just got to do the work. We just got to have them. We just got to do that. We think it's going to roll out, it's going to identify some new collaboration practices, and that's going to be rolled out. We don't know if that's going to happen, but it's a hypothesis. And we think if we do that, then it's going to increase the employee engagement score from 65 to 80 in the annual survey. So what we really want to do is get a nice blend of all three of these. Now, I'm going to introduce the first of 4 tools that you've got access to help you write really good OKRs. And this one's called the OKR Builder. And in your Stellify space where you'll find these slides, you'll find the video, under coaching and in the help folder, you will find all of these agentic tools. We're going to start with the OKR Builder, and the OKR Builder is connected to the space that I've set up for everybody in this group. So when you go in, you'll have access to this space, you'll see the OKR, and I've also created a little play area for you all. So you've all of your names should be in there, and Stan is the name of our agent. I'll introduce Stan a little bit later on as well. But you can basically go in, find your name, and select an OKR. I'm gonna volunteer Riley here. I'm gonna say we're gonna build a great OKR. So what team am I building it for? Well, I'm gonna build one for Riley. Okay. So Stan then says, well, okay, the best OKRs connect to the bigger picture. So are there 1 or 2 teams whose objectives you'd like your OKRs to align to and support? Well, yes, I want Riley's OKRs to align to this outcome enablement session. I could maybe align to someone else's, but I'll not. I'll just align to this one. So Stan is now going to look at the OKRs for this session, including the equip objective that we came up with. And now Stan says, tell me about what you're trying to achieve. So Riley, if you'd like to come off mute, tell me just a little bit about your business and what you're trying to achieve. Just speak out loud and I'll pass on to that here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a startup mentor and investor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm helping, more specifically, solo technical founders to escape the infinite coding and getting 0 paid customer trap.
All right, let's just give Stan that. So we've trained Stan on everything about the outcome mindset and writing really good OKRs. So very good. And Stan knows about how to write really good objectives, how to write really good key results. He's actually come up and written one straight away. Often Stan will prompt a few more questions, but basically he's thought, well, I'm just going to start by suggesting an input, output, and outcome key result. So he thought, Riley, maybe you could host 3 workshops that teaches founders customer acquisition strategies. He thinks that will create a resource hub with testimonials from at least 5 founders, which you can measure. And the outcome would be achieve a 50% increase in founders who secure their first paying customer within 3 months of guidance. Give me feedback on that. Tell me more, and we can maybe improve it.
Do you want feedback on the OKRs that?
Yeah, or anything that you would improve it. Yeah.
They're actually really good because they're really similar to what I have. So I was not expecting that. What could I tell you as a feedback? Those 3 workshops.
Does that align to your vision, or anything else you would tweak, or anything? A bit more context. Context is king here.
More context. I'm really focusing on solo tech founders building SaaS. Mostly who are building solutions for 3, 6 to 9 months and never shipping.
Okay, let's just give it that. I think context is useful. You can chat with Stan as long as you want. Okay, it sharpens your focus. Okay, so now it's come up with an objective: empower SaaS solo tech founders who've been building for 3 to 9 months to secure their first paying customers. Yeah, that's why you're here. That's the outcome you're trying to achieve. So it's got your same input key results, but now it's polished up your output around SaaS founders. And again, so it's just put a bit more context in there. This is great. Now, what will happen is once you're happy with the key result, Stan will offer to create the objective and key result in Stellify here. When do you want to achieve it by? So we'll ask you questions, and then that's something you can track. We'll come back to a little bit later on. But yeah, hopefully that's the OKR builder tool, which is agentic. It's been trained on all of the good stuff around outcome mindset and OKR adoption. So go in, try it out. Hopefully it'll help you write a good OKR. Now, obviously that was quite a simple example. Riley was telling us about his business a little bit. Often when I work with customers and big companies and so on, I actually need to get lots of information from lots of different people's heads. I'm not fortunate where I can just talk to one person. I need to get, lots of different people. So the question is, how might we collaboratively discover everything we need to think about to write awesome OKRs? Stan will not write your OKRs for you, but Stan will work if you can feed it lots of context. I'm going to just mention 3 awesome practices that we use in client workshops, and there are reference guides linked on the slides. The first one's called impact mapping. This is really closely aligned to OKRs because it connects deliverables, technical deliverables, to a sponsored goal from your C-suite, and it's all done via measurable outcomes. So there's a link here that takes you to some slides and how we teach impact mapping. It's all open source, so you're very welcome to use it. It's such a cool tool because it allows you to start to write hypothesis statements like, we think if we build this agent, it's going to reduce this impact by a certain number for a particular actor. So you can kind of see how it is helping move towards OKR kind of territory. The second practice that we love is called metrics-based process mapping. This is a really good way if there's inefficiencies in businesses, how to quantify those. And I'll not go into the detail now, but there's 3 measures, and we can start to see where there's wastage and delay and wait times. Again, there's some slides here that you've got access to. It's a beautiful way of visualizing the negative impact of handoffs and handovers and siloed organizations. And it bridges the gap between people thinking, we're not going fast enough here, to actually giving you the data and a defensible case for changing that you can then go and measure progress and outcomes. So you can run this, and then the OKRs that gives you all of the context for an OKR. And the third one, which is actually one we just did today with our client, which is called event storming. This is a brilliant way to bring business domain driven experts into the room and get all of the knowledge out of their head. It's quite a complex practice. It's very colorful, very color coded. It comes from the world of domain driven design. This is one we did for the World Health Organization a few years ago. What it does, it sort of produces collaborative thinking about where we can optimize and start to give ownership. Really, really good for AI kind of investment work because it helps identify. So look, those are 3 practices you could workshop. There's a whole load of reference material freely available. Go and check it out. The other tool that I will do, I'll just go back to the coaching area in Stellify. If you've written an OKR already, and I know some of you have, you can pop it into Stellify and you can ask Stan just to feedback on it. So whereas I was using Riley there to go and give me a whole lot of context so we could write an OKR, the OKR checker will actually go and pull all of those OKRs that you've written already and give you some feedback. So just to give you an example, again, let's look at this outcome enablement session that we're running. We have an objective already that we're running around. We have some key results, which are pulled in. I'm just going to ask Stan to check the quality. Now, this will be interesting because Stan actually helped me write the OKR. So Stan is kind of marking its own homework. Okay, so Stan has come back and said, a lot of it is strong. Maybe it's not, it's ambitious but achievable. It feels a bit broad. Measurable business value, that's a fair point. Maybe it could be a bit more energizing. So yeah, okay, that's interesting. You can also ask Stan to suggest improvements. It will take your existing OKR and it will take all of the learning, the IP. It's learned a lot from all of the different teams that have used this already, and maybe try and improve it a little bit, just to give you ideas. It won't write it for you, but it'll give you ideas. So go check out the OKR Builder, the OKR Checker, check out those workshops. One thing I will say is often when I introduce OKRs, people say, oh, hey, Tim, these sound an awful lot like KPIs. Or they said, oh, yeah, we do OKRs. We have key results, but we call them KPIs. So I want to explain the difference between an OKR. Yep.
The screen sharing seems to be lagging. Maybe it's just me, but okay, now I see it.
We're back. Yeah, we got it. Phil, thank you. Yeah, I was just refreshing. So what is the difference between a KPI and an OKR? So to explain this, I want to explain an analogy where I'm from. I live in a place called Winchester in the UK. There's probably a Winchester in Canada and a Winchester in America. Winchester in the UK was the original capital of England. That's where I live. Often I work in London and I drive to London. In fact, my car is right now parked at Heathrow Airport. Now, when I drive from Winchester to London, I look at all sorts of data on my car. I look at the fuel gauge, I look at the speedometer, I look at the temperature gauge, the oil pressure. All of that stuff on the dashboard is giving me health about my vehicle. Is my car running okay? Is it going to run out of petrol? Am I speeding? Is there anything that I need to maybe think about? And I love data, so I love all the geeky stuff going into cars these days. So the more data it can blast at me, I'm happy. Now, when I drive to Heathrow, London, I'm not very good at directions, so I always program my satellite navigation, and I say I want to go to Terminal 4 at Heathrow Airport, and my sat nav tells me, am I heading in the right direction? How far away am I? Am I making progress or am I not? If I take a wrong direction, it will tell me, and it will tell me I'm heading off track. These days, with the dynamic traffic stuff, it will even tell me if I'm actually going slower than I need to. So the dashboard is like your KPIs. They're your health metrics. You keep an eye on them. You need to do that. Your OKRs are like your sat nav. It tells you, am I heading in the right direction? Am I getting towards the destination? I need both of those. I can't get to London by just looking at the KPIs and thinking, well, when I'm 65 miles further, I must be where I need to get to, because that's not going to give me the accuracy. That's why I need the sat nav. Equally, if I just had the sat nav, I might run out of fuel because I'm not keeping an eye on those metrics. So you need both of these. Sometimes a KPI will set off an alarm that you need to do something about, and you maybe write that as an OKR in your next cycle. If you do that, that's a really good use of OKR. It's like, something's gone wrong. We need to focus on that next quarter. We need to change direction. Let's write an OKR. Once we've reached that destination, it can go back into being a KPI. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing I want to talk a little about is this scoring. And this came from Google, and we built it into our platform. So in the world of OKRs, if you achieve 40%, it is success. It means the team is doing something right. It means we're moving the needle in the right direction, and we should celebrate that. So 40% is actually seen as a really good score. In our platform, your indicators will go yellow at that point. 70% is seen as full achievement. And this is this sort of psychological mindset shift that we're actually not aiming for 100, we're aiming for 70. If we do go over 70, it's not a bad thing, but it's important that we learn. Did we stretch ourselves enough? Could we have maybe stretched ourselves further? Maybe something to take into our learning cycle. So 70 is the optimum. Now, occasionally I get feedback at this point where a leader will say, hey, Tim, there's this thing happening in our business, and we have to hit that. Otherwise, we're dead. We're a startup, and there's a certain amount of runway, and we need to hit that. And your 70% thing, that's not a good message. We need to do that, and this needs all of the focus. So in the world of Google, this is how they deal with this. They have what they call committed OKRs, and I say use these sparingly. You shouldn't use P0s, committed OKRs, unless you really have to. But this is a communication mechanism for you to say, this trumps everything. We have to do this. And if everything else gets dropped, in order to hit 100% for this OKR, this is the one, okay? I try not to use them unless I really have to. It should be a clear path as to how we're going to do that. It should be more known. We're not really having so much experimentation and innovation. We are just saying we're using it as a communication tool, that this is how that we're going to achieve this. The rest of them, OKRs, can be prioritized P1 to P4. And this is a way of communicating relative priorities. And sometimes these priorities will change. You can be agile and adapt based on kind of the market conditions, or maybe you change priorities in your company during those 3 months. So again, there's a whole crib sheet all about these. Last thing I will present before we do a bit more quizzing is how do we connect multiple teams together? So the prevailing mindset here is, well, the CEO should write his or her goal and write their key results, and then they should just delegate those key results out, and we'll give a key result to marketing, and we'll give a key result to sales, and we'll give a key result to delivery. That's the way actually a lot of teams do this. This is the better way. The better way is the CEO writes a goal and communicates, this is my goal, and this is how I'm measuring progress towards them. Then each of the teams within the organization write their own goal. They said, well, with that context, we're going to write our own goals, and we're going to write our own key results, and we are going to connect those up to the CEO's goal. This means that those teams have ownership and empowerment, and they aren't being managed, they aren't being delegated those OKRs. So this is the way we prefer. Another way of happening it is if you're connecting to your customers, and a lot of you are agencies, you've got customers, you might say, well, what's our customer's goal and how do they measure progress? We're then going to measure the work that we do around what we understand our customers' goals to be. And we're going to anchor our entire engagement around our customer's goal. And then our services team or our product team or our training team, they're going to write their own goals and connect them in. This was a sort of a whole area of OKRs that really intrigued me. And when I was at Red Hat, I really saw the need to have a way to visualize the connection. So this is where Stellify came from. It was the idea, can we visualize lots of teams and our customers and our supplying organizations together, building a star chart. So here's this little video that explains that. Let me turn it down. Sorry, trying to talk. This is in the platform that you can use Stellify to set up your teams, set up your customers' teams in one space, and then create connections so that you can check you're all on the same page or see where you're not connected and you should be connected. And in particular, where there's high performance and one team is helping another team move the needle towards success. So if you go into Stellify and you set up some OKRs, maybe try setting up maybe one of your customers' OKRs and think, how does what we do help move the needle for our customers? The star chart that you'll find is sort of linear. We've now just got a 3D version, which we will be releasing very, very soon. This is what it looks like now. In fact, I'll give you a very, very, very quick demo of it, just so you've seen it. It's a really nice way to sort of think, well, how do we, actually, I won't do that. You can see it on the screenshot there. Can I see my customers' outcomes and measures? Can I see our customers' measures? Can I see the different teams in my organization? And can I create these connections so that I'm creating these bright constellations of light? So yeah, go in, check out the star chart when you get a chance.